Good Friday morning to you. Welcome on into Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order and you as well. Our wonderful listeners, 205-834-9450. Listen, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but as we get closer to kickoff, I don't know, man. Maybe, am I just missing the SEC in a college football playoff championship game? Because it feels as though the closer we get, now we're starting to get that little bubble up, and it's almost like, a team that was bought in Ohio State. They assembled the best roster in 2024. They attacked the transfer portal. They're very open, like, hey, this is what the NIL collective is. This is what we got. And then Notre Dame kind of just starts to bubble up. And, early on in the season, that loss to Northern Illinois, you're feeling like, oh, it's the same old Notre Dame. They're going to, when they have expectations, they seem to kind of just dwindle away. But it feels as though as we're getting closer to kickoff, a lot of people that I talk to, they're leaning more towards Notre Dame pulling off the upset than they are just Ohio State's just going out there and mop the floor with them. Because, again, it's tough when you look at the track record that Ohio State has had this season. You lose close to Oregon, but you find a way to absolutely blow it against your hated rival and people tend to forget. Going into the playoff, it was literally Ryan Day's job on the line if they didn't win a playoff game. And all they've done is handle their business for three straight games and find themselves for competing for a national title. And it just doesn't feel as though it's getting as much just juice going into it. Again, we work in this business. So, we were going to watch it regardless, no matter who was in it. But it feels as though when you kind of, listen to, your friends and social media, it just kind of feels like y'all realize there's a national title game on Monday. It's because now the season's a little bit longer than it has been. So you're kind of like, oh, man, we're still in college football. And even if you go back and watch some of these playoff games, maybe the playoffs going to 12 teams indirectly kind of affected people's viewing habits because it's, I don't really care about the SMUs of the world. I don't necessarily care about, the Boise States or something. But, Ashton Genty had something to say about that because, of course, you wanted to watch them. But did we have too many teams in this playoff? Or are you kind of just are people burnt out of college football? I thought this is the heartbeat of it all.
Yeah, so I actually, I thought about this yesterday, and I had a realization that on Monday, unless things change, that'll be probably the first time I've watched a national championship game where I will be sitting at home on my couch. It'll be me and my wife, and that's it in 15 years. Since I was in middle school or going into high school, probably, where I'm not watching a game with a group of friends because every year it's just, even when for me going to Alabama and a lot of my friends coming from there as well, obviously we all got together when Alabama would play them, but even last year, it's the national championship game, right? We're going to get together and watch it. It's like watching the Super Bowl, right? You're going to get together with, friends, family, whatever, and watch it. I know for a lot of people, and this is the first year that it's just like, I'll watch it if, for us, obviously we're going to be locked in, but, for a lot of my friends and stuff, it's like, yeah, I'll probably tune in for a little bit.
Right.
It's not this is just going to be a great game. And I think that's one of the things that's hard to wrap our heads around is I understand, look, there's no SEC team in there. A lot of people don't have a rooting interest in this southern part of the country. But I just think, it should be a great game, in my opinion. And so from that standpoint, this is the last college football game you have until late August, early September. So, I'm going to enjoy it. It should be a great game. It's two heavyweight teams, two huge brands. The storyline of Notre Dame becoming likable and can they finally get that national championship that's eluded them since the 80s for Ohio State. All right, if they go out there and just dominate them, well, welcome to the era. We're already in it, but really welcome to the era of these $20 million super teams. Where you see guys go all in for 1 year of a roster with hopes of winning a national championship. And then after that, maybe you take a couple years or a year off to kind of reload the collective. And then you just get into this cycle where every year or two, some of these programs are just going to go all in and unload a pile of money and hope it gets them a national championship. So there are interesting storylines to go along with it. But, I also think, to a certain degree, it's like, oh, okay, it's Ohio State and Notre Dame. if you don't really like those programs, you probably really dislike them. I know we
Mhm.
talked about how Notre Dame's more likable with Marcus Freeman, but I still think for, just the average casual fan, it's like, oh, Ohio State, Notre Dame, I don't really care. Or maybe you're looking at Ohio State's a what, an 8.5, a 9 point favorite. Oh, well, it's probably not going to be that competitive. Am I really even going to bother? So, yeah, I think there's a lot of different factors into it, but that's kind of how I rate things is when you don't hear people saying, "Oh man, we need to watch the national championship game," or "What are you doing for the national championship game? We need to, get together and all hang out and watch it and make it this event like it normally is." And that's just not the case this year.
Right. And I think it's because two fan bases that, I mean, really down here, we kind of despise. And I mean, it's more of the older guys, the older generation when it comes to Notre Dame, because like for me and you coming out, like for, a lot of our, I guess you say football minds, Notre Dame's been good, but every time we've seen them at the stage, like,
See, I was about to say, when I think of Notre Dame, I think of like Charlie Weiss and Brady Quinn.
yep.
That's like the Notre Dame that I'm familiar with. And again, like good,
Yeah.
but not elite.
Right. And then you got, and even going to this game, Marcus Freeman, former Ohio State linebacker. He's going against his alma mater in the biggest stage of them all in the national championship game. And I think it's probably just because of the style in which these two teams play. Notre Dame is a modern day old school type of ball team, built on the defensive side of the ball, hang their hat defensively. They're big on, ground and pound, game control, not asking Riley Leonard to go out here and be, an air raid quarterback. It's just, hey, just don't make mistakes. Whereas Ohio State, offensively, we've always known what they've been as far as just, plug and play a quarterback. The system's going to work for you. You'll have elite receivers to throw to. You'll have elite guys in the backfield. Offensive line will be intact. And then now the defense has really started to amp up these past couple of games where, they shut down Tennessee and they had no chance. They shut down Oregon and absolutely demolished them. And even with Texas, because we kind of gave Sark that benefit of the doubt of, okay, he should be able to scheme up some things, which he did. But ultimately, it comes down to the final mistake in that drive with Quinn Ewers and the way that he turns the ball over. And I think for us down here in the SEC with no SEC representation, it's kind of just, which team? They both can't lose, so somebody has to win. Are you just kind of going with, well, Ohio State's been rolling, we'll see where they go from there? Or is it, Notre Dame kind of feels like the closest thing that we've seen to the SEC as far as their look, their makeup. Can they pull off the upset? Because I do think Marcus Freeman being their head coach now, he has a chance to kind of rewrite these narratives because he's so early in his Notre Dame career where he's already taken them to places that, Brian Kelly had some success, but he never won the big one. And when he did show up in the big one, it was usually a quick exit. And it's like, okay, why were y'all even there? Where now, even if you're just competitive with Ohio State, I think the mantle and I guess you'd say, the reputation for Notre Dame can change from this point forward because we know the playoffs aren't going to give them any kind of slack. They're already telling them, like, hey, there's no chance you're going to be able to have a first round bye. Like, you don't play in the conference. If you get in, you're going to have to play 3 games in order to get to a national title, which is that, okay, like, we'll take that. We'll eat that. And then for Ohio State, it's, well, you just rented this roster for 2024. You didn't necessarily handle your business in the regular season. You still found yourself in the playoffs, and now you're getting that return on investment on the back end. So it's, okay, well, Ryan Day, we have the pressure that he has to just win football games in the Big Ten at Ohio State is absolutely magnified. Because as soon as, if he goes out there and lays an egg and they don't score, 35 plus points, it's, well, this team wasn't ready to play. Too much pressure on this team to go out and find a way to win. So I look at this game as kind of, the closer we get to kickoff, you can give me an argument how Notre Dame can win. You can also give me an argument on how Ohio State just keeps on rolling. But I do think that going into kickoff, it just kind of feels that you almost have to force it. Like, you got to force this thing. Like, hey, y'all realize there's a national championship game on Monday. Like, we know what NFL does as far as their numbers. But I think these two brands of football with Notre Dame and Ohio State, and just who they are as far as where they've been in college football, this is kind of one of those historic matchups of something that we kind of grown up with of, Notre Dame back in the 70s, 80s. Hey, they were rolling. And Ohio State has been a perennial powerhouse for so long. It's, why isn't this getting more buzz than what it is, and it could just be like with us regionally because we're in the South. It's well, we ain't got no SEC teams in it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's part of it. But again, I mean, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I do think another part of it is, maybe how good Ohio State's looked, and even, not playing maybe their best against Texas and still winning by 14. Maybe some people just kind of check out a little bit because you're like, man, all right, yeah, they're just going to kind of go and do their thing, and because I mean, the Texas game was competitive, but the first two weren't competitive for Ohio State. And maybe some people just kind of have the mindset of, okay, it's probably going to be a stinker. Maybe it's good for a quarter, and I'll tune in for a quarter and
Right.
watch that. But, I'm not expecting it to be a full, like, 4 quarters bloodbath or anything like that. And I understand that, there's a lot of differences in a year. But don't forget that these teams played in the 2023 season. So not this past season, but the season before that. And Ohio State won 17-14. Now, granted, it was not the prettiest game by any measure for either of those teams, offensively speaking. But again, that was a game where I think a lot of us went into it. I know I did, thinking, okay, yeah, Ohio State's going to go in there and handle their business like it's Notre Dame. Okay, defensively, maybe they can give them some fits, but Marvin Harrison and at the time Kyle McCord and Abuka and these guys, oh, they're just going to go and make Notre Dame look silly. And they find themselves in a fist fight. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that defensively, Notre Dame was able to cause a lot of problems for Ohio State. They ultimately lost the game, but it was a 17-14 game. And then you go the year before that, and Ohio State beats Notre Dame 21-10. So a little bit more of a gap there. But still, that was the Notre Dame defense that was able to stop C.J. Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Amika, like absolutely incredible offense. So I look at this game, and again, I know there's a lot of different players on the field for both sides going on Monday, but I feel like this game is going to be maybe a little bit more competitive than people are giving it credit for. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I could see it looking more. I expect it to look more like the Texas game than the Oregon game.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that too. I don't see. I think Notre Dame's defense is too good to let that happen.
Yes.
Like, I know what Ohio State offense can do. I think they're extremely explosive. I do think they're going to be able to score some points, but I do think Notre Dame defensively can cause some. They can cause some commotion.
And we
And
saw Texas. Finally, it was like, okay, there is a way to slow down Ohio State.
right,
Texas showed us there is a blueprint in the playoffs of, okay, these are some of the things that you can do well, eliminating Jeremiah Smith, things like that. It just, can Notre Dame do those same things?
right, and I mean that's another thing. That's another key point in a lot of this is Jeremiah Smith, and I think that this, like you said, Texas showed that he can be neutralized. Now it's the other weapons that you still have to take account for because they have so many playmakers on the field. And I think I want to hear from the listeners. I want to hear from y'all. 205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls, always welcome here on Morning JOX. Just, you don't have to necessarily give your final score, but how do you feel like this game is going to go? Because there's a part of me is saying if Ohio State, jumps up, 2 touchdowns, is Notre Dame going to press? Are they going to start pressing? Are they going to?
Yeah, you don't want to be in that spot if you're Notre
Right.
Dame. You're not built for that.
You're kind of in no man's land. So we'll keep the conversation going on the other side. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. Friday, January 17th. Welcome back into Morning JOX. JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and you as well. Our wonderful listeners, 205-834-9450. Not necessarily Final Score Friday. Not Final Score Friday because we are live on Monday on Martin Luther King Day. We will be live covering the college football playoff. Just getting you set for that. So you can send your final scores on Monday because we will be live here on JOX 94.5. But it's just kind of, as we get closer to kickoff, just what is your gut telling you about this game between Notre Dame and Ohio State for the national title? Because to me, I'm going back and forth of, I don't want to have paralysis by analysis, but it does feel like Notre Dame just kind of feels like this team of, I'm not going to say destiny, but they're out to rewrite the script of who Notre Dame is. And I think Marcus Freeman has a lot to do with that because he's a coach's coach. Like, he's a player's coach. He gets it. And I think that he's done something for Notre Dame and given them kind of an edge that they've been missing for a couple years because they've had talent for multiple years and multiple times they've been in this position, but it never felt like they could get over the hump, where it feels like Marcus Freeman is taking this team to another level, and he's going about it in a very just different, I wouldn't say diplomatic way, but he's just different. I love everything about Marcus Freeman. I would love to see him in the SEC at some point, but the fact that he has Notre Dame in this, and we're not just washing our hands with him like, oh, it's Notre Dame. They have a chance to win a national title on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be completely honest. I did not think that Marcus Freeman in his first 3 years on the job would be playing for a national title. And I think many of us, if you had asked us when Brian Kelly left for LSU, all right, well, who's going to play for a national title first, LSU or Notre Dame? With Marcus Freeman, I think a lot of us would have gone LSU. And so it is ironic because I know, Brian Kelly made some comments earlier this week saying, oh, well, I didn't leave Notre Dame because I didn't think I could win a championship there. I wanted to go to LSU because it was a new challenge. It's like, okay, sure. You can try to convince yourself. Maybe say it enough times and you'll convince yourself that that's true. But it's just such a testament to Marcus Freeman and the job that he's done with that program. And I think the way too that when I look at Notre Dame, like that is a program to me that in terms of looking at the landscape of NIL, they are one of the programs that seems like they have done things the right way, right? Like, they're not grabbing the headlines like Ohio State where they're going and dumping $20 million on a roster. They're being very selective with the people that they bring in. Now, quarterback's been big for them because obviously they had Sam Hartman that they brought in from Wake Forest a couple of years ago. They just spent $1.5 million to bring Riley Leonard over from Duke this past season. But for the most part, they've done a good job of, recruiting guys, retaining talent, and then filling holes where needed, right? It's not like these, they're a Frankenstein program where every year they're just mix and matching players from the portal and hoping that it sticks and that, everybody gels and the chemistry's fine. So it's just cool to see programs that, again, it's Notre Dame. Nobody's going to have sympathy for them ever. I totally understand that, but again, the fact that Marcus Freeman has made them somewhat of a sympathetic program, at least compared to Ohio State, I think is pretty remarkable. But he's just done such a solid job of getting that program better. And I know especially early this year, you lose to Northern Illinois, and a lot of people are probably ready to start freaking out and going, man, all right, we've lost to Marshall recently. Like, we've had some ugly games here the last couple of years at Notre Dame. Just games you're not used to losing if you're a program like that. Then you lose to Northern Illinois, and now to find yourself in the national championship, it's pretty remarkable. I like the way of the format in the sense that, it's like the first year of the 4-team playoff, right? When Ohio State got bumped in over TCU and Baylor. And a lot of people were frustrated because it's like, okay, so you're rewarding Ohio State because they played a conference championship game and the Big 12 didn't have one at the time. But then we clearly saw what them and Ezekiel Elliott did to Alabama, and then we saw what they did to Oregon after that, and you're like, okay, I think they made the right call, right?
Yeah.
They put the best team in. And so I understand frustrations with the seeding. Yeah, that needs to be better. The path that certain teams have in the playoff is definitely easier than others. But the fact that you have two programs that wouldn't have been in the playoff in a 4-team format, and they have earned, in my opinion, earned the right to play for a national championship. They have shown that they are the two best teams left on the field based on who they've had to beat to get there. I'm a fan of that, and I'm not going to complain about that. If you're not happy that one of the top 4 seeds didn't get in, then well, they should have won their games.
Yep.
So, I from that standpoint, I do like that. I do enjoy that. Even a team that you can stumble in the regular season, and I know there's some people that don't think you should be in the playoff if you ever lose in the regular season, but I think it's clear that right now they got the two best teams in, and that's what it's about, right? At the end of the day, we can argue about the 12 teams that are in, but you won a national championship game that feels like, okay, these are two teams that earned their way here. They have shown they are the best teams right now, and it's not a Georgia TCU type of situation. And I think from that standpoint, that has gone very well, right? I do think we ended up with the two best teams right now.
Absolutely. 205-834-9450. The text line, phone lines are always open. Nick from Madison, he texts in. He says, first time in a long time, I probably won't even watch the whole game. I just hope both teams have fun. I will be okay if both teams lose. I don't know. Like, I get it as far as fandom, like you're attached to your team. But I find it difficult that I'm not going to be, even if I wasn't in this line of work, like I would sit down and lock in for a national championship game.
Well, and I think it's different in the sense that, okay, let's be honest. People are not going to be as interested in us breaking down Ohio State and Notre Dame as they are breaking down an Alabama or an Auburn game, right? Because there's not that rooting interest and there's not maybe that much of a familiarity with it as other things. But I mean, on a Monday night, if you are awake and you are looking for something to watch, you're probably going to watch the national championship game. Now, you may be like, the person that just texted in, you may not be locked in on the couch for the full 60 minutes. But I think more people are going to watch it than maybe they will say are going to watch it, because the reality is going to hit on Monday night of, oh, well, let me check in and see how the game's going. Maybe it's for a quarter, maybe it's for a half, maybe it's a great game and you find yourself sitting there for an entire 60 minutes. But it's like we did a poll question on 3-Man Front earlier in the week, and it was essentially, what's your interest level in the national championship? And we had, I think 60% of the votes were, I'm not going to watch the game. I'm like, okay.
That's wild.
Okay, but they're going to watch the game.
Right.
Like, I get it. You're going, oh, I don't care. I'm not going to watch the game. On Monday night, when you have nothing else on TV, you're going to watch the game.
Right. People just don't love ball anymore. What's going on with society? Do we not love football? We claim that football is the best sport here in American soil, and now you're openly choosing not to watch a national championship game. It was something different if it's like week 1, Ohio State versus some MAC school. No, this is the national title. These are the two best teams in college football right now, vying for a chance to bring home the trophy to represent that they did what they needed to do in the year of 2024.
And after this, because we have the divisional round of the NFL this weekend, but after those games are over, and so when we wake up on Monday, we're getting ready for the national championship. Just think about this. I know we have the Stallions, looking forward to Stallion season, but there will be 4 meaningful games of of the high level football that we're used to in college and the NFL. And that's it until the fall. You're going to have the AFC and NFC championship, the Super Bowl, and the national championship. And that's it. And then we have the UFL and the Stallions, which we're going to be excited for. But let's just enjoy it.
Please.
Right. Because we're going to miss it when it's gone. And I know we're all, basketball is great. We're excited for March Madness. But, you're going to miss college football when we always do. And the season flies by and we take it for granted sometimes. So, yeah, it should be a good game. Just enjoy it. You don't have, here's the great thing, right? You don't really have to be upset one way or the other,
exactly.
Right? Maybe you don't like one team more than the other, but it's not like your team is playing in it for most of the people, unless you're, Domer or somebody that's listening. But you can just kind of sit back and enjoy hopefully what will be a highly competitive national championship game.
Exactly. And for the degenerates out there, I mean, are you just not going to watch the game, but you'll play on it? Like, come on. Like, where
they're going to watch the game.
Right. Where are those trenches? Where are the folks in the trenches, man? We want to know. 205-834-9450. Somebody texts in and says, Conrad Van Chaos, NIL is NIL and what it's doing to our sport is what has driven a lot of views away. I truly believe that. But when I watch a game, that's the last thing that's on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, it's still the product on the field. is the end all be all. I could care less how much they're making.
I'm not sitting there watching, you know, the other day watching Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins, running for Ohio State and sitting there and going, man, do they really love Ohio State?
Right.
Do they really love this program? Eh. And I mean, let's be honest, right? This was going on before. Granted, it is on a much, much, much larger scale now.
Right.
But let's not act like, 10 years ago, there weren't players that played at a certain program because of what they were promised more so than I just love the campus and, I grew up a fan of this university and I can't imagine playing anywhere else. Like, there's always been a little extra incentive for a lot of these places.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Tennessee was putting it in McDonald's bags.
That's right.
Now it's called NIL.
Mm-hmm.
Now you ain't even got to skip the bag part. Just say, what's the number that you need?
No, Jeremy Pruitt just a little ahead of his time, I guess.
Exactly. Lewis takes in. He says, as a Bama fan, I've had nothing for either of these teams. Well, Marcus Freeman is really hard not to like. And the way Notre Dame is playing a little old school ball makes me lean that way. I want to see the Suckeyes who came down and bought an SEC team just throw up all over themselves. If they win, they will say how awesome the Big Ten is. No, they're not. You're the 17th SEC team.
Yeah, I think that's the other factor we have to keep in mind here, with your rooting interest. Like, if you're a Ohio State fan or you have some connection to them, good for you, go for it. Do we really want, it would be pretty sweet if the Big Ten didn't win a national championship just because of the whole narrative that we've had to go through here for the last month or two about the SEC and how it's no good anymore. And, the Big Ten's the best and the greatest thing ever. And it would be pretty ironic if Notre Dame, of all teams, was the one that won the national championship and the SEC and Big Ten were kind of left out to dry.
Somebody texts in and says, goes deeper than just the two brands that are in and people not watching. NIL, et cetera, has made college football less interesting.
But it's made it more competitive.
Exactly. Like, you've gotten more parity through it all. As ugly as it may be, as just shady as the business is, when it comes down to it, if you've watched these athletes that are on the field, the product has not changed at all. At all.
And I get it. Like, it may not be as fun to watch your team and not feel like all of those guys are super bought into the program or, I understand you don't maybe want to get that emotional connection to a player or like really, become a big fan of theirs because who knows if they're going to be there the next season. And I understand that. But again, I mean, a lot of us are professional sports fans. It's really not all that dissimilar to that kind of stuff.
You feel me?
And I'm with you in the sense of I understand maybe it makes you feel like it takes away some of the soul of the game. And I'll give you that. But I think from a competitive standpoint, it's kind of tough to beat what we had this year.
Right. Like, we wanted parity. The only thing that we asked for was parity. We didn't know how we were going to get it. We didn't know how it was going to look, but we definitely got it.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we still saw some Cinderella. We still saw some upsets. Notre Dame is playing for a national title and they lost to Northern Illinois in the regular season. We saw it happen. It happened.
Yep.
So I don't know. I find it difficult because to me, it's still college football. I get it that, some of the players may not necessarily be bought in and all these things, and the transfer portal's kind of giving them a way out and all these things. But when it comes down to it, during a regular college football season, I found myself each and every Saturday locked in, excited to see what these teams were going to do. And we got it. The parity, I'm here for it. 205-834-9450. We'll keep the conversation going on the other side. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5.
6:36. Welcome back into Morning JOX here with Conrad and Damien. Going to be with you here until 7 o'clock when we hand you off to McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. Getting some of your feedback on the national championship game. How excited are you? The excitement level, not quite where it's been the last couple of years. But I mean, me and Damien were talking in the break, and we were saying, would there be more intrigue if this was a regular season game? Because I mean, if you're going into a Saturday, and I guess maybe you're looking at it as, oh, well, I can watch Alabama or Auburn or whoever I root for, and then I can watch the great, non-conference matchup or non-SEC top 10 matchup. I feel like people would be really excited, like Ohio State, Notre Dame, that's going to be a great game. And here we have it in the national championship, and that excitement doesn't seem to be there. So still want to hear from you as we carry on throughout the show. But we were talking about NIL, and some people were chiming in saying they think NIL is the main reason that a lot of people aren't, I guess, is enthralled with college football and these games that maybe their teams aren't playing in anymore. But there is some big news potentially that came out last night on the NIL front. And if this sticks, this is going to have massive implications for how players are paid, not only in college football, but across both men and women's sports as a whole in college. And so this was a report or a letter that was released by the Department of Education yesterday. And essentially, the main concept or the main point of this is that NIL is not exempt to Title IX. And so, if you've heard us talking about, the House settlement and how moving forward, they were going to be budgets somewhere in the $20 to $25 million range for a lot of college football programs. A lot of that was based on the fact that there would be a tier system for revenue that came in and how that was distributed for NIL and athletic programs at universities. And the idea was that about 70% of the money was going to go to football because they bring in the most money. And that's how this is based. It's based on what brings in the most revenue. So you'd have about 70 to 75% going to college football, about 15% going to men's basketball, 5% or so would go to women's basketball, and then whatever's left over, that 5 or 10%, will be distributed across all of the other athletic programs that you have. And so now with Title IX and this being a situation where essentially they're saying, no, it's a violation of Title IX if you're paying, the men's basketball team more than the women's basketball team, for example. That is going to cause quite a wrinkle for a lot of these teams or a lot of these universities that, again, are looking at what Ohio State did this year and said $20 million for a football roster. All right, let's do it and see if we can go win a national championship. And it looks like maybe that's not going to be, I guess, legally possible anymore. And part of this was, well, maybe there's a loophole through the collectives. And since the collectives are not directly tied to the universities, you can kind of skirt around that. And, but no, that's in there too. That is, it is essentially saying just because you have outside funding to give to your players, that does not exempt you from Title IX because it is coming from outside the university, because the opportunities that are available need to be equal for men and women athletes across college. So um, that is potentially a big change. I'll be completely honest with you. I do not agree with that. I understand that you say, oh, well, it's not fair. Okay, well, it's not fair that if you're a college football player and you're bringing in 90% of the revenue to your athletic department and you're getting the same cut of the pie as a women's soccer player. Nothing against women's soccer or anybody that, plays that for their university, but what are you bringing into the university from a dollar standpoint that makes it where you deserve the same amount as a college football player? I get it. Some people don't like it. If you don't like college football at all, you probably hate this, but I mean, that's capitalism, right? You have something to offer, you can benefit off of it. And if you're bringing in the majority of revenue to your athletic department, I think that you should be entitled to getting the majority of the payouts from that because you're the one that brought it in. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I'm sure y'all will talk about it more on Mac and Cube. I know we'll definitely talk about it on Three Man Front, but that is potentially a very big piece of this NIL puzzle moving forward, and it could drastically shape how, college football program, every athletic department, but, especially college football is moving forward in this roster construction and how much money is available to these programs.
Yeah, there's one thing Wu-Tang Clan taught us.
Cash rules everything around me.
Hey, Green, get the money. $1 bill, y'all. 205-834-9450. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's talk to our buddy John in T-Town who wants to talk some ball with us this morning. What's going on, John?
Hey guys, how y'all doing? Great show as always. One of the things I'll say about this morning, about the NIL being spread out, I understand is most schools football is the majority. I think it should be breaking down per school by that individual sport. Because you think about UConn, and I use them as an example for a while. Even Tennessee, women's basketball was the biggest draw. It still is for UConn. But you had years of Tennessee when football had fell off that baseball and women's basketball actually brought in more money than the football program. You were paying more out for football. So I think the only way to do it fair is you're going to have to do it school by school, sport by sport. Because there are certain schools that, just other programs are the draw. Kansas, men's basketball is the biggest draw, not football.
Yep.
So I think that's the only fair way to do it. I'll hang up and listen to your response. Y'all have a great day.
You too, John.
Okay, I agree with what you're saying. But at the same time, okay, you brought up Tennessee. Even when Tennessee was bad, I can promise you their football program was bringing in infinitely more money than their women's basketball. It doesn't mean that it was just because the product on the field wasn't as good. People are still watching it, right? People are still buying tickets and going to the games. And so now in like a UConn situation, okay, yes, I think that's a little bit different. But, it's somewhere like Tennessee, even when they are down and, women's basketball is doing great, baseball has been great, men's basketball has been great, football is still bringing in so much more money than those other programs, even when the football team's struggling. That's the point. It's about how much money are you bringing in, not necessarily how good is the product on the field or, maybe how many people are watching the games on TV, but it's the revenue from, apparel, ticket sales, all of these different things that are generated through the football program that there's never going to be a world where the football program is not the most profitable for a school like a Tennessee or an Alabama or an Auburn.
Yeah. The text line is getting kind of active. 205-834-9450. Zach texting says, today I learned Conrad hates women, especially ones that play soccer.
I mean, that's not the point I was trying to make at all, but if that's your takeaway, then that's your takeaway.
We're talking about business. Green is the only thing that we're talking about. And to your point, they may have a better product on the field and the playing surface, but I'm willing to bet if you did ticket sales at the peak of Tennessee women's basketball and you did a ticket sale revenue from the football team, even when they weren't that good, it would look vastly different.
And it has nothing to do with a men's program versus a women's program. It's about what are you bringing back revenue-wise, and that's how the distribution should work, right? If you're a salesman at your company and you are the best salesman by far at your company and your commission comes back and it's, you've done a great job, but we have to pay everybody out equally. So even though you did a better job than everyone else at your company, we're going to take your commission and we're going to split it up evenly amongst all of the other salespeople because, y'all are a team, right? Like, you're all under the same umbrella, but it's got to be even. We don't want somebody to feel like they're getting more of the pie than the other person. You're not going to like that, are you? It's a very similar situation.
Hey, all is fair in love and war, and also NIL at this point. Let's go to the
business.
Exactly. Let's continue on the phone lines. Let's go to Don. Don wants to talk with us this morning. What's happening, Don?
Hey, good morning, guys. And a good topic of conversation here, Conrad. And you're right. Here in the South, and especially in the SEC, what would you think the percentage of revenue would be for football? About 75% of the school's budget a year?
Yes, I can tell you fairly confidently that outside of college football, which, like you said, is going to be the majority of it, men's basketball and women's basketball, essentially every other athletic program is taking money away from the university. Now, there are certain cases like, Tennessee baseball and things like that, Oklahoma softball, right? But for the most part, your football and your men and women's basketball teams are the only things bringing in significant revenue on a yearly basis.
Yeah, and actually, to be honest with you, on baseball, in the last 10 years or so in the SEC, it's got huge. I mean, there are some stadiums in the SEC that hold over 20,000 people.
Yeah.
And everything. And Connecticut is a different model because, their women's basketball team is probably the best thing they've had. And now their men's team is starting
Yeah.
to win a lot of championships
Mm-hmm.
and everything. But on the game Monday, Damien, when I was younger, my dad taught me how to hate Notre Dame and Ohio State. So I don't know I don't care who wins this game. I really don't, because and everybody here in Alabama that's my age grew up hating Notre Dame and Woody Hayes and Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely generational.
And yeah, I mean, and I got a trivia question for y'all. See if y'all have ever heard this trivia question. Name me the 3 schools that Bear Bryant never beat. See if y'all know this one.
Oh man, I don't know. Are 2 of them Notre Dame and Ohio State?
No, Notre Dame is one of them, but Texas is one, and the one that nobody can ever really figure out this question, because the third school, Conrad, was actually Alabama, because you got to realize he coached at Kentucky and Texas A&M.
Yeah,
so
he never beat 'em.
Alabama.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Well, see, that's what I was going to go. Was it Kentucky or Texas A&M? Because he never, that would be like a weird stat. But there you go. So Notre Dame, Texas, and Alabama.
Yeah, but in matter of fact, speaking of Ohio State and Alabama, they played in the first Sugar Bowl in the dome, because the Sugar Bowl used to be played at Tulane Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, but yeah, you guys are too young to remember all this, guys. Y'all, that's why I call y'all the young guns, guy. But
I prefer to
Show, as
remember the
always-
last time Alabama and Ohio State played football.
yeah, they beat you with a third string quarterback there, buddy.
No, it's when we
no,
beat them in the
no.
national championship 4 years ago.
No, I'm talking about the game where they beat you on the third.
I don't know what you're talking about, Don. I don't remember that one.
It's crazy. They did it with a third string quarterback, and Auburn couldn't even do it with their starter in Peyton Thorne last year. That's crazy. He's been starting for 2 years.
And then JT Barrett went and whooped up on some kids and some Madden in the hospital.
Hey, they ain't come here to play today. And it was like the score was like 51-3. He was like, "Hey, stop lying, man. It was 58-3." It's like come on, bro. Hey, when you pick up the sticks, it means business. 205-834-9450. We continue with your text messages, your calls when we return here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. 6:52 here on Morning JOX. JOX 94.5, Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order here with you for a few more moments as I get you set for McElroy and Kublik in the morning coming up at 7 o'clock on the dot. Follow that by Three Man Front from 10 to 2 and also Paul Feinbaum from 2 to 6. So keep it locked right here on JOX 94.5. Just kind of getting your reaction to everything we talked about this morning. On the JOX text line 205-834-9450. Jimmy texts in and says the topic of NIL and equality aligns with the topic of Notre Dame being forced to play in a conference. Notre Dame has figured out how to get the most money out of the system. I can't be a hater for someone succeeding. It's capitalism at its best.
Yeah, I mean, that's my thing with Notre Dame is, do I think they should have to be in a conference? Yes, but if no one's going to force them to, why would they? There's no, I mean, there's no reason. They're doing it great.
Yep.
I mean, again, just look at the playoff. They're getting $20 million from the playoff. Ohio State's going to get $1.1 million because they have to split it with 18 teams in their conference, and Notre Dame doesn't.
Yeah, we had a caller call in during the break, during one of the breaks, and was very, very disgruntled about that. The fact that, you know, these teams that are in have to split it amongst the conference, but Notre Dame keeps it all. I was like, I'm sorry.
Well, and the reality is, I mean, if you're, you know, we talked about this on Three Man Front a little bit. If you're the ACC, right? Because Notre Dame competes in the ACC in every sport outside of football. They are a member of that conference. If you're the ACC, why do you not just pull the, all right, if you want to keep competing in these other conferences because you need it for the other leagues or the other sports, you need to join us for football as well. And if you don't, then we'll see you later.
Yep. Danny from Coleman, he takes in and says, the reality is that everyone is fine with NIL when they land a 5-star and they hate NIL when they lose a Caleb Downs. We have 2 blue bloods in neighboring states playing for the title. Everybody just shut up and enjoy Ohio State's loss. I'm here for it.
I like that. That's good.
Steven says, I'm an LSU fan, but I believe this game is going to be fun watching. The spirit of Rudy is with Notre Dame Monday night. I will say go Irish. I'm sure Brian Kelly's probably saying that too.
He said he was rooting for one.
As he should.
Yeah.
Because if October is for pretenders and November is for contenders, what's December and January? The real ones?
I guess, yeah. I did like how Brian Kelly kind of slid in. I recruited a lot of those guys.
Right.
Just trying to get a little credit, maybe.
If I knew my coffee wouldn't spill, every single year without LSU being in the college football playoff, I'm going to do that. Just every single time we're here. We got to explain to y'all LSU isn't in the college football playoff.
Even when he gets angry, it doesn't feel real.
I know it, man. All right, guys. McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Those guys are next.